A fire broke out last Friday afternoon north of Lee Vining, and it did close US 395 for several hours. The Conway fire, at last report, mapped at 50 acres, was burning in sagebrush with some scattered pinyon pine and juniper trees. Now, the fire was 75% contained as of this morning. Full containment expected by tonight. That fire located south of Conway Summit on the west side of Highway 395. We're getting these pictures from R.D. Cohen. There were no structures threatened, but there were power lines nearby. Fire resources working the Conway fire: 5 engines, 1 strike team, 2 water tenders, 1 dozer, 2 helicopters, a Type 1 and a Type 3, and 2 hand crews. The press release notes the interagency response included the U.S. Forest Service, BLM, CAL FIRE, local fire departments, Bridgeport, Lee Vining, June Lake, and Mammoth Lakes, as well as the CHP, Mono County Sheriff, CAL FIRE, and Southern California Edison. That Forest Service press release notes excellent interagency cooperation was significant to the good progress made in the fire suppression response that ensured safety of crews as well as motorists on the road. Cause of that fire is under investigation. Well, Mammoth Medical Missions held a mass casualty training seminar at Mammoth Mountain's Eagle Lodge last Friday. Sierra Way Media's Rob Gill filed this piece.
This is the first time that I've run it, but Mike's been running a version of this. This is actually the 3rd annual, so he's done kind of a smaller version for hospital staff and for local fire and EMS that he either ran out of the hospital or out of the firehouse. But it was much more informal and much smaller, and this year was the first time that we ramped it up and had an accreditation with University of Nevada School of Medicine, so that we were able to give continuing education credits to various levels of providers, from techs to RNs all the way up to surgeons. So they're getting education credit for this. And then at the last minute, through some friends down in Inyo County, we were able to give continuing education credit to paramedics and EMTs as well, so the EMS personnel could get involved. And as I say, it kind of came together at the last minute for some of that continuing education credit. So the good thing is that we know we have that in place for next year. So we're definitely inviting, any EMS personnel, anybody who needs continuing education credit, to come out and get involved. So it's a 3-day seminar. You had the option of signing up just for the first day is essentially the didactic day, which is a long, grueling day of PowerPoint lectures covering a whole range of items of what you might encounter in a disaster scenario, all the way to what sort of anesthesia would you need in a disaster scenario, sterilization techniques, and then a lot of subspecialty mini lectures on ultrasound, on imaging without electricity, various ways to be effective in a mass casualty disaster scenario. So day 2 is kind of breakout sections where we had smaller groups of 4 to 5 people rotating through 7 different stations and learning how to operate on the ultrasound, learning how to build a field hospital, learning how to do triage, talking about medical illness and disaster scenarios, vectors of disease. And then today, which was the final day, day 3, we come together as larger groups. So the whole thing is broken down into 3 groups of 13 to 15 people, each of them being treated as basically a medical platoon. And then we take them through 3 stations and run a disaster drill. In this case, it was a 9.0 earthquake, probably something like in Turkey. And the teams are rotating through. The 3 stations are, the first one is building a field triage hospital out of whatever's available. So they've got a very small, limited pile of supplies, some solar panels, some tools, some camping gear, some tarps, and then they're using whatever they can find in the landscape to build a hospital. The second station is a triage station where they're working with actors who are, they've been given cases beforehand, so they know that there's a pregnant woman with a gunshot wound who's concerned about her daughter. There's an intoxicated football coach who's threatening to sue if he doesn't get seen. so that the doctors get to feel really what it's like in a triage situation. How do you choose which patient to help first? And then the third station, they were graduating into the cadaver truck, where we had both, we had cadavers sponsored by Synthes, and we had Cut Suit, which is a pretty fancy new technology where an actor can wear a suit that contains a lot of the vital organs and actually has blood, and that you can cut into with a live actor. So it simulates what it's actually like to work on a patient.
I enjoyed the cadaver lab the most, so really getting to interact with the cadavers and working with surgeons and performing procedures that may have been done on myself or other people over the years, and actually seeing that from the surgeon's point of view.
So they're doing that. They've had a little experience in that on day 2, but now on day 3, they're being thrown a whole lot of curveballs with smoke and loud music, and the power goes out, and trying to operate under those circumstances to basically recreate the possibility of a disaster scenario and how these teams are going to react.
Really saw things I could never have imagined.
There's very little of this kind of thing taught in medical schools. We're sort of at the cutting edge of some of this kind of training, and it could happen anywhere. This is the sort of thing, we saw in the Philippines, where these disasters strike, they're not partial to, it doesn't matter what the socioeconomic spectrum is, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, these sorts of things can happen, whether it's an earthquake, or it's a tidal wave, or it's a hurricane, or an explosion, or a dirty bomb, or a terrorist attack. I mean, it's not that we're paranoid about it, but I think we need to be prepared for anything that could happen. With the environment changing the way it is, the incidence of these sorts of mass casualty events seems to be going up, so we need to be prepared for it.
I think the biggest benefit to me of this training was that it really increased my preparedness for any trauma situation, and the confidence I'll be going into those situations with.
So the next seminar, and I should have the dates off the top of my head, but I'm not sure I do, but it's the end of September next year. We've chosen the dates. The dates are online. The website is www.mammothmedicalmissions.org.
I would 100% recommend others take this. Again, I have no medical experience, and feel I had a huge benefit. So everyone from the layperson to the well-trained surgeon, it's an incredible experience.
All right, thanks for that, Rob. A 27-year-old Mammoth Lakes man, Nick Skleminski, died in a drowning accident last Thursday at Grant Lake. Press release from the Mono County Sheriff's Office reports that on September 11th at approximately 3:45 p.m., Mono County Sheriff's Dispatch received an emergency call from OnStar regarding a possible swimming accident and drowning at Grant Lake. Two friends, both from Mammoth Lakes, according to that press release, spending the afternoon along the shores of Grant Lake, decided to swim across the narrow part of the lake. During their swim, one friend turned his head around to ensure the other friend was swimming with him, and he was swimming with no problem, so they continued their swim across the Narrows. Now, the press release states that the friend continued to swim to the shore and noticed that his friend was no longer visible in the water. He returned to the water, yelling for help to search for his friend. When he couldn't find him, ran to the marina to get help. OnStar was utilized to call 911, and personnel from the Mono County Sheriff's Office, June Lake Fire Department, Mono County Paramedics, and Grant Lake Marina were dispatched to locate the missing swimmer. Personnel arrived on scene and began searching for the missing swimmer. Again, Nick Skleminski, age 27, of Mammoth Lakes, was located unresponsive near the south end of the boat ramp. Nick Skleminski worked on the maintenance crew at Sierra Star Golf Course in Mammoth Lakes. The cause of the death of Mr. Skleminski is under investigation. Joe Sample, a one-time Mammoth Lakes resident and described as an iconic jazz and keyboard artist and composer whose music transcended genres and defied easy labels. He died last Friday in his native Houston from complications from cancer. Joe Sample was 75. Mr. Sample split his time between residences in Santa Monica, had a house in Mammoth Lakes, as well as his native Houston. Joe Sample was a founder of two seminal Los Angeles bands, the Modern Jazz Sextet, as well as the Jazz Crusaders. In the late 1970s, the Jazz Crusaders transitioned into a blend of funk, soul, and jazz and renamed itself the Crusaders. Joe Sample also recorded with the likes of B.B. King, Steely Dan, and the Supremes. He was loved by many in Mammoth Lakes, and he loved skiing at Mammoth Mountain. No services have been announced for Joe Sample. We'll be back with more news.